Hello and welcome to the SoulLink Spawner Quick Start tutorial video for version 1.1.0. First of all, this video assumes that you've already performed the steps in the SoulLink Spawner installation guide or the installation video before starting this tutorial. That includes preparing your integrations if you have any manual integrations that need to be activated. Also, before you begin, you want to have a scene already set up. In this case, I'm using Gaia. I've created this little island with a forest, and I have set up Gaia lighting system and the Gaia weather system, and just using a Gaia provided FPS controller. Now, if you're not using Gaia or any third-party sky systems or lighting systems, you'll want to go into and find the SoulLink Game Time prefab. Can be found here. And this is just a basic game time script which manages a simple day-night cycle with a directional light. And you want to drag that into your scene only if you're not already using some third-party system like Gaia Lighting or Enviro or Unistorm or whatnot. Now that you've got your scene completely prepared, first thing you want to do is go to Tools, SoulLink, Spawner, and Setup Scene. This gives you this hierarchy here, starting with this global top-level object, which has a debug option, some links to help, Discord channel, and email support. And you get the SoulLink Spawner component here. You get an automatic integration with the Gaia time, which also adds day, month, and year tracking, which is not done by Gaia itself. And the Gaia weather system. This script also has custom temperature information because the Gaia lighting system and some other third-party systems don't have temperature settings, and those that don't, you can simply activate them here and activate all the different effects that weather can have on temperature. And you also get the pool manager, which will manage your object pools for your AI. So what we're going to do is go into the SoulLink Spawner component. As you can see, we do not have a SoulLink Spawner database. There is a default database that comes with, or actually several, but there's one main one, the SoulLink Spawner demo database. You could use that as a starting point. I do recommend that you actually start from scratch and create your own. And in order to do that, first of all, you want to be in whatever location in your project hierarchy here that you want your database to be created, because wherever you're at currently is where you're going to get your database. So we'll just call this the Gaia demo to match the scene name, and click the create button. That creates the database and assigns it to this spawner database. Second thing we have here is we have auto detect player and a player tag of player. That way when the scene runs, it will automatically detect that as the player. Next thing we have is auto add spawnable interface. All objects AI that spawn in the scene through the spawner have to have a spawnable interface. There is a base spawnable component that comes with SoulLink, and there's also a couple of integrations. For instance, there's a spawnable Emerald AI. There's also a spawnable Invector FSM AI, and of course you can have your own custom spawnable interfaces. This will just make it easier for you, so when you do not have to prepare your AI prefabs ahead of time necessarily, if you have the auto add spawnable interface. The next thing you can do here is set spawnable settings. If you want the auto add spawnable interface to have a certain set of settings for those spawnables, then you can add that here. What you have to do though is you have to go into create, find SoulLink, and there it is, spawner and spawnable settings. And we'll just leave it at spawnable settings, and this gives you your options: perform fading, by default, the default texture color name for fading. For built-in rendering pipeline, it's simply underscore color. For HDRP and URP, it's underscore base color. Then you have your default fade in length, fade out length, a despawn delay, despawn check interval, despawn range buffer, whether or not you want the spawn outside the player field of view, whether it requires a nav mesh or not, and if it's persistent. A lot of settings that you'll learn about later. For now, I'm just going to change a couple, and despawn delay, actually make this longer, and we'll just go with those settings, and then we'll assign that to our spawnable settings here. This is completely optional, of course. You could turn this off and then just have your spawnables added manually to your AI. Now, if the AI already has the spawnable interface, it will not add it again, nor update it to these settings. Next thing we have is all the spawnable spawning options. The spawn radius is how far away from the player things are going to spawn. And then you have a minimum range, which is how close to the AI will things spawn. This is just so things don't just pop up right in front of your face. The spawn rate is how fast that things are going to spawn. You can go to a slower spawning rate or to a really fast spawning rate. The default population cap, when you add a spawn, what is going to be the default population maximum for at any one time, the maximum spawns that we're going to have in the scene at any one time. Do we want to delay spawns on start, and so forth. I won't go through all these options. Okay, what we do need next is to define some time of day settings. Everything is based on time of day. So we want to say add time of day. And just for our purposes, we're just going to have an anytime time of day. And it will encompass the entire 24-hour period from 0 to 23.99. Biomes is the next thing we want to do. So looking at our scene here, we've got some kind of rocky areas or sandy areas near this water. And then we have some forest textures over here. This gives us a better idea. We turn the light on. So the idea is, well, what do we want to spawn in the different areas of our scene? And we define our biomes by these texture influences. But how do we know what texture influences there are? So one thing we can do, I like to use this object here, and we can add a component called query terrain textures. And if we click on scene view mode, then we'll see up here it's got an elevation and of different texture names and influences. So as you move your mouse over the terrain, you can see, in this case, the Gaia. Unfortunately, these texture names are not really user-friendly. I think the _0, _3, and _4 is kind of the index of the texture as far as Gaia is concerned. So that's something to remember. But in this particular place, we have the 0 index is 0.81 influence, the 3 index is 0.09, and the 4 is 0.10. In this area here, which is mostly what you get in the forest area, the texture index 4 is at influence 1. A little bit further, you get a little bit of 3, but it looks like the forest area is primarily this texture 4. Let's take a look at the sandy beach area and see what we get down there. Down there we get primarily texture 0. Looks like 0.3s, 0.4s, 0.3. Oh, there's actually a 2 as well. Texture 2 at 0.73. So 0 and 2 for the beach. And then the other areas was texture 4, I believe we said, for forest. So what we want to do is go into Spawner, add biome, we'll call this beach add filter. Okay, and for the beach we said it was texture 0 and texture 2. So this is texture index 0. We want to include that at a threshold of, say, 0.3. Let's add another filter. And also we want the texture 2. Also say at 0.3. Now what we want to do is say any of these instead of all. So it's like either a 0.3 of this texture or a 0.3 of this texture we'll consider to be the beach. For another biome, we're going to call this forest. Add a filter. And this one we said index 4. And we'll say about a 0.35 for that. Okay, so now we have a couple of biome definitions and we have a time of day. Now we can go to our spawns. And we can start selecting. So for the beach, we will add that biome. Then the time of day, we only have any time, so we'll add that. And then we can add spawn. Now for demo purposes, it does come with a couple of demo AI. We're going to use this yellow wander AI around the beach area. Maybe a 20 population cap. Give it a little higher probability of appearing. We'll make it scale from half height to full height. We could do things like overriding elevation or slope angles. We could even have it spawn in the air. If you have AI that are flying AI, or you just want something to drop from the sky randomly, you could have it spawn in the air. We could also add additional filters, texture filters, weather filters, season filters, or proximity filters. And we'll get into more detail of those in other videos. So now let's also, we will hide this biome, and we'll add a forest biome. And anytime, time of day, we'll add a spawn. And for the forest ones, let's put these green capsules. Again, we'll scale them so there's some variety. We won't do any overrides. I'm going to save the scene. And before we do anything else, I'm going to add the debug canvas to the scene. So look for spawner debug canvas and drag that into the scene. This is going to give us some on-screen information such as the total spawns, the current time of day, if it's raining or snowing, the temperature, and the date and the season. This gives us some additional information so we can see how things are working. So with that, let's go ahead. I should note also before we start that I did also bake the navigation mesh ahead of time. Make sure you do that. Okay, so after some playing around with looking at the different textures and the elevations in the area, I settled on the beach having to have both texture index 0 and 2 at least a 0.3 threshold, and the forest being either the texture index 4 or 3 at a 0.35 threshold. I set the minimum elevation to this little island at 25, so we didn't have things spawning like out here underwater. And then the individual spawns, I decided I want the beach to be between 25 and 35 elevation. So anything that starts getting up higher up here towards the forest, it'll be the cutoff point for the beach spawns. And then for the forest spawns to start at 40, so they would only start further up into this forest area. So with that, let's give it a run and take a look. Alright, things are starting to spawn. They're walking around. Oh, there we got a yellow one there. And the beach area. There's another one. Here's some more over here. Okay, so they're starting to come in. As we see the green ones up towards the forest. And that's it. That's it for this quick start tutorial. Thanks for watching.